Welcome to the broke girl era. Men are letting society collapse to stay home and chill. Imagine for a moment a world where men once believed in partnership built on mutual respect and shared effort. Picture the quiet satisfaction of coming home to someone who truly valued your presence, not for what you could provide, but for who you were as a man. Now, contrast that with the reality so many men face today. Modern dating has become a landscape filled with one sided expectations where women often approach relationships with a sense of entitlement that leaves men feeling used and discarded. This is not a story of isolated incidents or bad luck. It is a widespread pattern that has left countless men questioning the very foundation of relationships with women. If you have ever felt the sting of being treated as nothing more than a resource or an ATM, you already know the frustration runs deep. Stay with me through this entire discussion because by the end, you will see the full picture of why so many men have chosen to walk away and how understanding the deeper truths can bring you clarity, peace, and the strength to build a life on your own terms without regret. If you are enjoying these Angry Guy videos and you want to show some real support, consider buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It helps keep the content coming strong, and I appreciate every bit of it. Now, let us get into the heart of the matter. Men are done with the entitlement of women. All men have now noticed it, the modern entitlement of women. For decades, men have watched as cultural shifts have reshaped expectations in ways that favor one side while leaving the other carrying the load. It did not happen overnight. It built slowly through changes in media education and social norms until it reached the point where the average man can no longer ignore the pattern. Modern women often come into interactions with men carrying an assumption that they are owed attention, time, and resources simply for existing. They treat men as providers whose primary role is to fulfill en- endless demands while offering little in return that builds true partnership. This is not about every single woman on earth. It is about the dominant trend that has become impossible to overlook in dating apps, social gatherings, and everyday conversations. And think back to the stories you have heard from friends or experienced yourself. And a man takes a woman on a date. He chooses a nice place, invests his time and money, and shows genuine interest. In return, he receives casual conversation that quickly shifts to her listing what she expects in a partner. The list usually includes financial stability, emotional availability, constant validation, and a willingness to put her needs above his own without question. When he tries to share his own values or boundaries, the response often turns cold or dismissive. She may even frame his reasonable expectations as a flaw in his character. This pattern repeats across countless encounters, leaving men exhausted and disillusioned. The sense of entitlement shows up in small ways at first: demands for expensive gifts or trips early on, expectations that he will always pay without any gesture of appreciation or reciprocity. Later, it grows into larger issues where any attempt to discuss balance in the relationship gets labeled as controlling or insecure. Women in these dynamics frequently position themselves as the prize. They declare openly in conversations and online content that they bring value simply by being present, while the man must prove himself through endless provision and deference. They make it clear that they will offer little of real substance in return: no genuine support during his hard times, no willingness to compromise on major life decisions, no effort to understand his perspective when conflicts arise. Instead, the message is consistent: men exist to serve their emotional and material needs. Any man who questions this setup is quickly dismissed as unworthy or problematic. This attitude has become so normalized that many women express it without hesitation in public forums. They talk about men as walking wallets or sources of attention while simultaneously claiming superiority and announcing that the future belongs to them alone. Even in moments where women appear vulnerable, the underlying pattern persists. Consider the viral videos where women express confusion or sadness that men no longer approach them in public spaces. They describe feeling invisible or overlooked. Yet within the same breath, they shift responsibility entirely onto men. They claim men must have internal issues, fear of rejection, or outdated ideas about gender roles. Rarely do they examine their own behavior or the signals they send. The entitlement reveals itself clearly here. The expectation that men should risk rejection and invest effort despite clear indicators that the interaction will be one sided. When men choose self preservation by stepping back, the blame returns to them rather than any honest reflection on what women bring to the table. This dynamic did not emerge from nowhere. It connects to deeper patterns in human nature that have been observed across generations. Psychology as a field has often avoided confronting certain uncomfortable truths about female behavior. Most men know these truths instinctively because they have lived them. Their fathers knew them through hard experience. Their grandfathers recognized them, but often chose silence to maintain social harmony. The truth is that women possess a capacity for behavior that can be described as wicked when left unchecked. This does not mean every woman acts on it constantly. Many can and do choose better paths through conscious effort and strong values. Yet the tendency exists as part of their fundamental wiring. It is embedded in biology and evolutionary pressures that shaped female psychology over countless generations. Nature itself operates with ruthless efficiency. It favors traits that ensure survival and reproduction, even when those traits create conflict or imbalance in social structures. Men developed greater physical strength and a tendency to prioritize facts, logic, and long term stability because those qualities supported protection and provision. Women evolved with different strengths, including heightened emotional sensitivity and social intuition that aided in child rearing and alliance building. These differences are not flaws in isolation. They become problematic when modern culture amplifies the less constructive aspects without balancing them with accountability or mutual respect. Women often operate primarily through feelings rather than facts. This creates a fundamental mismatch in how arguments and decisions unfold. A man may present clear evidence, logical reasoning, and practical outcomes. A woman in the same discussion may reframe everything through her immediate emotional state. She does not engage with the facts on their own terms. Instead, she shifts the ground to how the situation makes her feel and expects the man to adjust reality to match those feelings. This approach allows her to win almost every disagreement, not through superior reasoning, but through persistence and emotional manipulation. The man finds himself arguing against a moving target where logic holds no weight. He is essentially debating with an emotional framework that prioritizes internal experience over external truth. The comedian George Carlin captured a related idea perfectly when he warned that you should never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Women have mastered the art of emotional argumentation that functions in a similar way. Their emotional maturity often remains underdeveloped in certain areas, allowing them to weaponize feelings with the intensity of a child who has not yet learned to regulate impulses. They cry, shout, reframe, or guilt trip until the man either concedes or withdraws in exhaustion. This is not always conscious malice, though it can become that. It stems from a hardwired preference for emotional stimulation and immediate gratification over calm, rational resolution. To truly understand this dynamic, men must view it through what some call a black pill lens. That means setting aside romantic illusions and examining female nature with clear eyed realism. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's great philosophers, saw this centuries ago. He analyzed women with a pessimistic but accurate eye long before modern cultural movements complicated the picture. Schopenhauer argued that women lack the depth of judgment required for truly great intellectual or artistic achievements. He observed that their decision making remains tethered to short term emotional needs rather than abstract principles or long term consequences. The most educated woman, he noted, would still lose in basic reasoning to the least educated man when feelings entered the equation because facts become secondary to emotional satisfaction. This perspective aligns with observable reality. Women as a group show less interest in fields that demand rigorous logical consistency detached from personal experience. They gravitate toward areas where emotional expression and social dynamics dominate. When conflicts arise, they often choose chaos over stability because emotional intensity provides the stimulation their biology craves. A stable, predictable relationship may feel boring to them even when it offers security and growth. They may unconsciously sabotage harmony to generate the drama that keeps their internal world activated. This is not insanity in the clinical sense, but a form of functional chaos where feelings dictate actions regardless of the rubble left behind. Schopenhauer described women as embodiments of the species' reproductive will. They are driven by instincts that prioritize short term gains in mating and resource acquisition. Greed in this context is not always about money, though it frequently manifests there. It appears as an insatiable desire for attention, validation, and emotional resources for men. They test boundaries constantly to see what they can extract. When a man provides, they raise the bar. When he resists, they may accuse him of inadequacy or cruelty. This pattern repeats across cultures and eras because it is rooted in biology rather than any single social movement. History and literature have documented this tendency for thousands of years. Ancient texts, including passages in the Bible, warn about the dangers of a contentious or wicked woman. One proverb states that it is better to live in the wilderness than with a quarrelsome wife. That observation did not come from hatred. It came from lived experience across generations of men who watched relationships unravel under the weight of unchecked female behavior. Societies structured themselves with safeguards, not because they despised women, but because they understood the need for balance. When those safeguards erode, as they have in recent decades, the predictable result is widespread disillusionment among men. After more than 50 years of cultural shifts that have punished men for simply existing as men, many have reached their limit. Feminism, in its various waves, promised equality, but delivered a framework that often demonized masculinity while excusing female flaws. Men were told they carried original sin through patriarchy. They were expected to apologize for their strength, logic, and ambition, while women were celebrated for traits that previously required moderation. The result has been a generation of men who have watched their fathers, grandfathers, and friends suffer through unfair divorces, financial ruin, and emotional devastation. They have seen the courts favor mothers almost automatically. They have heard endless narratives that paint men as disposable providers whose value ends when resources run dry. This cumulative experience has led to a profound awakening. Men are seeing women for what they truly are at their core when societal restraints loosen. Not every woman embodies the worst traits, but the potential for wickedness, chaos, and self centeredness exists strongly enough that caution has become the default. It is not hate to recognize this, it is wisdom. It is the same clear vision that led previous generations to establish traditions of courtship, marriage, and family that protected both sexes from their own worst impulses. When those traditions are dismantled without replacement, men lose faith in the system entirely. The walking away we witness today is not a temporary phase, it is a rational response to decades of imbalance. Men have discovered peace in solitude. They build careers, pursue hobbies, strengthen male friendships, and focus on self improvement without the constant drain of one sided relationships. They no longer chase validation from women who view them primarily as tools for emotional or financial extraction. This choice brings freedom. It allows men to direct their energy toward goals that actually reward effort rather than endless appeasement. As this shift accelerates, women find themselves increasingly on their own. They complain about the lack of good men while continuing the same behaviors that drove those men away. They demand high value partners without developing comparable value themselves. They chase career success and independence only to discover in their 30s and 40s that the biological clock and declining desirability create new regrets. The world around them may face economic, social, and cultural challenges, yet many men feel little urgency to rescue women from the consequences of their collective choices. Men have learned through bitter experience that their sacrifice is rarely reciprocated. They focus instead on their own survival and prosperity. This does not mean men celebrate suffering. It means they have detached from the expectation that they must always serve as saviors or providers for those who show no loyalty in return. The future will reveal whether women adapt by embracing greater accountability and reciprocity or continue down the path of entitlement. For now, men have chosen self preservation, and many have never felt more at peace. Let us go deeper into the psychological patterns that make this dynamic so persistent. From early childhood, girls receive messages that differ sharply from those given to boys. They learn that their emotions are valid simply because they feel them. Tantrums and tears often produce results where calm discussion might not. Boys, on the other hand, are taught to suppress feelings, to endure discomfort, and to solve problems through action rather than expression. These divergent upbringings create adults who speak different languages when conflict arises. A man enters a disagreement looking for resolution based on shared facts and practical outcomes. He wants the relationship to function better moving forward. A woman in the same situation often seeks validation of her feelings first and foremost. If those feelings are not centered, the discussion itself becomes proof of his inadequacy. She may escalate emotionally until he either apologizes for things he did not do or withdraws to preserve his sanity. Over time, this wears down even the most patient man. He begins to see that genuine communication is impossible when one party refuses to engage with reality outside her internal state. This emotional operating system serves certain evolutionary purposes. Heightened sensitivity to social cues helped women navigate complex group dynamics and protect offspring in ancestral environments. Yet, in modern individualized societies, it creates friction. Women can reframe any situation to maintain their sense of moral superiority. A man who works long hours to provide may be called neglectful because he was not emotionally available at the exact moment she needed attention. A man who sets boundaries around his time or finances may be labeled abusive or uncaring. The goalposts move constantly because the underlying metric is her fluctuating emotional needs rather than objective standards. Men who try to debate or reason their way through these situations quickly discover the futility. They bring data, logic, and consistency. She brings intensity, tears, or cold withdrawal. The man who persists in logical argumentation finds himself exhausted and no closer to resolution. He has stepped into the arena Carlin warned about, where experience and emotional manipulation trumps facts every time. Many men eventually stop trying. They either endure silently until resentment builds, or they exit the relationship entirely. Observing these patterns through an unfiltered lens reveals how deeply they are wired. Studies in psychology and evolutionary biology have documented average differences in traits like agreeableness, neuroticism, and interest in people versus things. Women on average score higher in neuroticism, which correlates with greater emotional volatility. They score higher in agreeableness, which can manifest as compassion, but also as conflict avoidance, through indirect manipulation rather than direct confrontation. These are statistical tendencies, not absolutes, yet they explain why certain behaviors appear so consistently across diverse populations. Schopenhauer saw this clearly in his era. He watched women use their social intelligence not for collective good, but for personal advantage within the constraints of their time. He argued that their intellectual inferiority in matters requiring detached judgment stemmed from their immersion in the immediate and personal. Great art, great philosophy, and groundbreaking science demand the ability to set aside personal feelings and pursue truth wherever it leads. Women, he observed, rarely demonstrated this capacity at the highest levels because their nature pulled them back toward emotional and relational concerns. Critics may dismiss Schopenhauer as a product of his time, yet his observations have endured because they match lived reality. Women have produced fine work in many fields, especially those involving emotional insight or social nuance. Yet the pinnacles of abstract reasoning composition and invention have remained overwhelmingly male domains. This is not oppression. It is the natural outcome of differing cognitive and motivational profiles shaped by millions of years of evolution. Acknowledging the difference allows for realistic expectations rather than forcing artificial equality that breeds resentment on all sides. The reproductive imperative adds another layer. Women carry the greater biological investment in reproduction through pregnancy and early childcare. This creates a psychology oriented toward securing resources and commitment from high value males in ancestral environments that drive produced adaptive behaviors. In modern abundance, it can manifest as hypergamy, the tendency to seek partners who exceed them in status, resources, or dominance. When combined with cultural messages that women deserve the best without equivalent contribution, the result is entitlement on a massive scale. Men, by contrast, evolved as competitors and providers. Their psychology pushes them toward achievement, risk taking, and stoic endurance. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. They fall in love more quickly and deeply in many cases because their bonding mechanisms tie strongly to visual and behavioral cues of fertility and youth. This makes them vulnerable to exploitation. A woman who senses his investment can extract resources, attention, and emotional labor while offering minimal commitment in return. She may keep options open through subtle flirting or social media validation. She may test his willingness to provide by making increasing demands. When his resources or patience run low, she can branch to another prospect with less guilt because her feelings have already shifted. This is the wicked aspect that men have come to recognize. It is not cartoonish evil. It is the casual self centeredness that places her immediate emotional or material needs above fairness, loyalty, or long term consequences. She may genuinely believe her own justifications because feelings color her perception of truth. A man who points out the inconsistency becomes the villain in her narrative. He is no longer the provider who sacrificed. He is the oppressor who failed to meet her evolving standards. Stories from real life illustrate this with painful clarity. Consider the man who supported his partner through years of education and career building. He worked extra hours, covered bills, and provided emotional stability while she pursued her goals. When she achieved success, she suddenly viewed him as beneath her. His steady provision became ordinary. His loyalty became boring. She left for someone who offered new excitement or higher status, leaving him with financial and emotional scars. He had invested, believing in partnership. she had extracted value until a better option appeared. This pattern repeats with variations across income levels and backgrounds. Another common tale involves the dating phase where everything seems promising. She showers him with affection and promises of compatibility. He opens his heart, shares vulnerabilities, and begins planning a future. Then small conflicts reveal the underlying dynamic. She expects him to manage her emotions while dismissing his. She demands he prioritize her social circle or family while resisting integration with his. When he expresses needs, she accuses him of being needy or controlling. The mask slips, and he sees the entitlement that was always present beneath the initial charm. These experiences accumulate until men reach a breaking point. They stop approaching women in everyday settings because the risk outweighs the reward. They delete dating apps after too many encounters with profiles listing demands without offerings. They focus on male friendships, hobbies, and self development because those areas provide genuine reciprocity and growth. The solitude that once felt like failure now feels like freedom. Society at large has responded with confusion and blame. Media outlets produce articles wondering why men are not marrying or committing at previous rates. They point fingers at male immaturity, video games, or economic factors while ignoring the obvious. Women have raised their expectations dramatically while offering less in return. They have absorbed messages that they are strong, independent, and deserving of everything without the corresponding responsibility. When reality fails to match the fantasy, they blame men rather than examining their role. Men who speak openly about these observations face immediate backlash. They are labeled bitter, misogynistic, or insecure. The irony is thick. Men who have given extensively in relationships and received exploitation in return are told their legitimate grievances stem from personal failure. This silencing tactic only accelerates the walk away. Men learn that honesty about female nature is punished, so they keep their insights private and simply disengage. The Bible and other ancient wisdom literature offered warnings not out of prejudice, but out of accumulated generational knowledge. Living with a contentious woman was compared to constant dripping water or living in a corner of the housetop. These metaphors captured the exhaustion of endless emotional demands and reframing. Men in those eras had fewer options for exit, yet they still recognized the toll. Modern men with greater independence have chosen the exit ramp in large numbers. This mass withdrawal sends ripples through society. Birth rates decline, marriage rates fall. Men invest less in careers that once supported family formation because they see no future in traditional roles. Women who delayed commitment in pursuit of perfection find themselves facing biological realities without the support networks they assumed would always exist. The chaos they helped create through cultural shifts now affects them directly, yet many still refuse accountability. Understanding these patterns does not require hatred, it requires realism. Men can still appreciate individual women who demonstrate consistent character, loyalty, and reciprocity. Those women exist, though they have become rarer in the current environment. The wise man learns to filter carefully rather than assuming good faith by default. He builds his life with or without a partner and approaches any potential relationship with clear boundaries and low tolerance for entitlement. The black pill perspective provides the necessary lens. It strips away the Disney narrative that women are inherently kind, nurturing, and fair. It reveals the raw biological drives that influence behavior beneath social conditioning. Women are not villains in a melodrama. They are human beings with instincts that can lead to destructive outcomes when unchecked by culture or personal discipline. Men have their own flaws, including tendencies toward aggression or emotional suppression. The difference is that male flaws have been heavily scrutinized and pathologized for decades. while female flaws have been excused or celebrated as empowerment. Schopenhauer understood this imbalance. He saw that civilization requires restraining certain natural impulses from both sexes. When restraints fall primarily on men, while women are told to embrace their feelings without limit, the social fabric phrase, relationships become battlegrounds. Families fragment. Children grow up without stable models of mutual respect. The solution for men is not to rage against women as a group. It is to withdraw from the dysfunctional game and build strength independently. Lift weights, develop skills, cultivate meaningful male friendships, pursue financial independence. Create a life so fulfilling that no entitled partner can disrupt it. When or if a high quality woman appears who demonstrates genuine reciprocity, the man can engage from a position of power rather than desperation. Until then, solitude offers more peace than most relationships currently provide. As men continue this path of self mastery and disengagement, the pressure may eventually force cultural corrections. Women who want partnership will need to offer more than demands and feelings. They will need to develop emotional regulation, accountability, and realistic expectations. Some will adapt, others will double down on entitlement and face increasing isolation. Either way, men who have walked away will be positioned to thrive regardless of the outcome. The world may descend into further chaos through economic shifts, social breakdown, or cultural excess. Men who have detached from the need to rescue or provide for entitled women will watch with equanimity. They have already grieved the loss of the old social contract. They have built new foundations based on self reliance and realistic understanding of human nature. Their peace is hard earned and worth protecting. This recognition of female nature as containing strong potentials for wickedness, chaos, and self centeredness is not the end of hope for connection. It is the beginning of wiser navigation. Men who internalize these truths can approach interactions with eyes open. They can enjoy female company without surrendering their frame or resources prematurely. They can set standards and enforce boundaries without guilt. They can walk away at the first signs of entitlement rather than investing years in futile reform efforts. The stories of men who have made the shift are inspiring in their simplicity. One man spent years in a relationship where his partner constantly criticized his efforts while contributing little. He paid most bills, managed the household logistics, and provided emotional support during her frequent crises. When he finally voiced his exhaustion, she accused him of selfishness and lack of empathy. He ended the relationship, moved into his own place, and focused on his career and health. Within a year, he reported higher energy levels, better finances, and genuine contentment. He no longer dreads coming home. He no longer walks on eggshells. The absence of constant emotional labor revealed how much it had drained him, and another man quit dating entirely after a series of short term encounters where women expected him to fund their lifestyles while offering casual companionship in return. He redirected that time and money into building a small business and mastering a martial art. His social circle became other driven men who shared his values. He found that male friendship provided camaraderie without the hidden costs. When asked if he missed female company, he replied that the peace outweighed the occasional loneliness. He would consider a relationship only with someone who matched his effort and respected his boundaries. Until then, he refused to settle. These narratives multiply daily across forums, conversations, and private reflections. Men are not disappearing into bitterness. Many are flourishing in ways they never did while chasing validation through relationships. They discover hobbies that bring flow states. They achieve fitness levels that boost confidence. They form bonds with brothers who have their backs without ulterior motives. The walk away is not defeat. It is strategic retreat followed by reconstruction on stronger terms. Women who observe this trend often respond with anger or confusion. They demand that men return to previous roles without addressing why those roles became unsustainable. They create content blaming male immaturity or toxic masculinity while ignoring the entitlement and lack of reciprocity on their side. This response only confirms the original observations. Rather than self reflection, they externalize blame. The cycle continues until enough women experience the consequences directly and choose change. For men, the message is clear: protect your energy, guard your resources, invest in yourself first. Understand the nature of the game so you are not played. The entitlement of modern women is real. It stems from a combination of biological tendencies, cultural messaging, and lack of accountability. Recognizing it allows you to respond with wisdom rather than frustration. The journey of awakening is individual, yet shared among millions of men worldwide. Each story adds to the collective knowledge. Each man who walks away and builds something better proves that solitude can be superior to toxic partnership. The future belongs to those who see, clearly, act decisively, and refuse to subsidize entitlement with their time, money, and peace. This recognition has spread quietly but powerfully. Men discuss it in private settings at the gym, over drinks, or in online spaces where honest conversation still survives. They share experiences that follow remarkably similar scripts. The initial attraction phase filled with promise, the gradual reveal of demands and double standards, the exhaustion when efforts go unappreciated, the relief when they finally prioritize self respect. These patterns transcend nationality, class, and education level because they touch something fundamental in male female dynamics. Philosophers like Schopenhauer provided early maps, but modern men have added lived chapters through their own trials. They have tested the ideas in real relationships and found them accurate more often than not. The black pill is not despair. It is the red pill taken to its logical conclusion, where illusions are fully stripped away. What remains is truth and the freedom that truth provides. Men who embrace this truth stop pedestalizing women. They stop believing that female approval defines their worth. They stop sacrificing their well being to maintain harmony with someone who views harmony as secondary to her feelings. Instead, they become centered in their own purpose. Their confidence grows from internal validation rather than external supply. This shift makes them more attractive to the rare women who value substance over extraction. But those women must prove themselves through consistent actions, not words. The wicked nature described earlier is not an accusation thrown lightly. It is an acknowledgement of potential that requires vigilance. Just as men must manage their own tendencies toward anger or withdrawal, women must manage theirs toward emotional manipulation and entitlement. When culture encourages only the latter while shaming the former, the imbalance grows dangerous. Men have responded by removing themselves from the equation. The results are visible in declining marriage rates, falling birth rates, and rising male contentment in bachelorhood. Continuing directly from this foundation, let us examine how specific mechanisms in contemporary society have amplified these natural tendencies into the epidemic we witness today. The entertainment industry plays a massive role. Television shows, movies, and music videos frequently portray women as strong, independent figures who deserve deference simply for asserting themselves. Male characters who provide structure or expect reciprocity are often depicted as outdated, controlling, or comical. Young women absorb these narratives during formative years and internalize the idea that their feelings and desires should dictate relationship terms. Social media accelerates the process exponentially. Platforms reward provocative content that generates engagement through controversy or validation seeking. Young women learn quickly that posting about their standards, demands, and frustrations brings likes, comments, and attention. They receive constant reinforcement that they are the prize and that men should compete for their favor. Meanwhile, any man who expresses boundaries or critiques female behavior risks being ratioed canceled or labeled toxic. The algorithm favors emotional intensity over nuanced discussion, so extreme entitlement spreads faster than moderate perspectives. Dating applications compound the issue by creating an illusion of abundance. Women receive far more matches and messages than the average man. This inflates their perceived market value and encourages pickiness that borders on fantasy. They swipe past solid, decent men while holding out for the top tier who can fulfill every checklist item. When those top tier men treat them casually or maintain multiple options, the women express outrage rather than adjusting expectations. The apps themselves profit from prolonged singlehood, so they design features that keep users hooked in endless cycles of hope and disappointment. Economic factors intertwine with these cultural forces. Women have entered the workforce in large numbers, which is positive in many respects, yet it has altered traditional incentives. In previous eras, mutual dependence encouraged compromise and appreciation. A woman who relied on a man's provision had reason to nurture the relationship and show gratitude. A man who needed a woman's domestic skills and emotional support had reason to invest consistently. When both sexes can survive independently, the need for reciprocity weakens. Women can demand more while offering less because they no longer face the same practical consequences for high standards or poor behavior. Education systems have contributed by emphasizing self esteem and emotional expression over resilience and critical thinking. Girls receive encouragement to trust their feelings and speak their truth. Boys are often managed for behavioral compliance rather than channeled into productive outlets for energy and ambition. The result is adults who enter the dating market with mismatched skill sets. Women bring heightened expectations and emotional volatility. Men bring stoicism that can appear as emotional unavailability when in fact it is a survival mechanism developed through years of being told to man up. Workplace dynamics add another layer. Corporate environments reward certain feminine traits like collaboration and verbal processing, while sometimes penalizing masculine directness and risk taking. This creates a broader cultural tilt where female perspectives dominate discussions of relationships and gender. Policies around harassment and sensitivity training, while well intentioned in theory, often create environments where men self censor to avoid accusations. A casual compliment or joke can be reframed as problematic depending on the recipient's feelings that day. This uncertainty makes men wary of genuine interaction, which women then interpret as lack of interest or confidence. Family courts have institutionalized the imbalance through decades of precedent favoring mothers in custody and support decisions. Men who built careers to provide for families find themselves financially devastated after divorce while watching their children raised under standards they no longer influence. Stories of men losing homes, savings, and access to their kids while ex wives receive ongoing support are common enough to serve as cautionary tales for the next generation. Young men absorb these realities through observation and decide early that marriage carries unacceptable risk. The cumulative effect is a generation of men who approach relationships with extreme caution or outright avoidance. They have seen too many friends destroyed financially, emotionally, or legally. They have watched popular culture celebrate women who leave marriages for trivial reasons while shaming men who express pain. They have experienced personally the casual cruelty of being treated as disposable once their utility diminishes. Their withdrawal is not immaturity, it is learned self protection. To illustrate, let us consider the story of a man in his early 30s who entered a relationship with high hopes. He had a stable career, good health, and a generous spirit. His partner seemed appreciative at first. She enjoyed the dates, the gifts, and the emotional support he provided during her stressful periods at work. Over time, her demands increased. She expected him to rearrange his schedule for her social plans. She criticized his friends and hobbies as immature. She became upset when he needed time alone to recharge after long work weeks. Any attempt to discuss balance was met with accusations that he did not care enough. Eventually, he recognized the pattern as entitlement rather than normal relationship growth. He ended the connection and redirected his energy into advancing his career and building a stronger social network with other men. His stress levels dropped immediately. His sleep improved. He regained the sense of agency that had slowly eroded. Countless variations of this story exist. The common thread is the gradual realization that the relationship was never mutual. It was an extraction process disguised as partnership. The woman brought her feelings and expectations. The man brought resources, effort, and patience. When the resources flowed less freely or the patience reached its limit, the dynamic collapsed, revealing its true nature. Philosophically, this connects back to Schopenhauer's observations about the will to life manifesting differently in each sex. Women embody the drive to secure the best possible conditions for reproduction and offspring survival. In modern terms, that translates into seeking the highest status provider who will also serve as emotional regulator and status symbol. Men embody the drive to compete, achieve, and spread their genetic material more broadly. When these drives operate without cultural restraints that enforce reciprocity, the result is exploitation and eventual male disengagement. The genius of Schopenhauer's analysis was his refusal to romanticize either sex. He saw both as driven by blind will rather than enlightened reason. Yet he noted that male drives often produce civilization's greatest achievements precisely because they channeled energy into abstract goals beyond immediate personal comfort. Female drives kept the species alive through practical nurturing, but rarely produced the same level of detached creation. This difference explains why arguments between the sexes so often feel like ships passing in the night. One side seeks truth and progress, the other seeks emotional harmony and resource security. When those goals conflict, the side operating on feelings can derail the entire discussion. Men who adopt the black pill lens stop expecting women to argue or behave like men. They accept that feelings will always dominate female reasoning in personal matters. This acceptance frees them from futile debates. Instead of trying to convince a woman with logic, they simply observe her actions and adjust their investment accordingly. If her behavior demonstrates entitlement, they reduce contact. If she shows consistent respect and contribution, they may engage more deeply. The power shifts from reaction to deliberate choice. This approach requires emotional discipline that many men must develop intentionally. Society has discouraged male emotional awareness in favor of stoicism, which leaves men vulnerable when intense feelings arise in relationships. They fall hard and fast, becoming irrational in their attachment. They tolerate behavior they would never accept from friends or colleagues. They make excuses for red flags because the emotional high overrides judgment. Developing the ability to feel deeply while maintaining frame is a crucial skill for modern men. It allows enjoyment of positive interactions without becoming enslaved to them. Practical steps include regular physical training, which builds resilience and confidence, journaling or honest self reflection to process emotions without suppression, cultivating male friendships that provide perspective and accountability, setting clear standards before entering any relationship and enforcing them calmly but firmly. These practices transform vulnerability from weakness into strength. The man who knows his worth does not need to chase or appease. He offers value from abundance rather than scarcity. As we build toward even deeper layers of this analysis, consider how the absence of father figures and positive male role models has accelerated the problem. Boys raised primarily by single mothers or in feminized educational environments often internalize female centric views of relationships. They learn that accommodating emotions is the path to approval. They suppress natural masculine traits to avoid being labeled problematic. When they enter adulthood, they lack the internal compass needed to navigate female entitlement without losing themselves. The cycle perpetuates until enough men break it through conscious effort and shared knowledge. The current moment represents a critical juncture. Men have awakened in sufficient numbers that the trend of walking away has become measurable and undeniable. Birth rates, marriage rates, and relationship satisfaction metrics all reflect the shift. Society can respond by encouraging accountability and reciprocity from women, or it can continue shaming men for their rational choices. The latter approach will only drive more men toward permanent disengagement. The former might restore some balance, though the window for easy correction has narrowed. For the individual man, the path forward is personal. Build your body, mind, and finances. Cultivate discipline and purpose. Understand female nature without bitterness so you can interact wisely when you choose to. Protect your peace above all, because once lost, it is difficult to regain. The entitlement of modern women is a fact of the current landscape. Your response to that fact will determine the quality of your life moving forward. Let us now transition into examining particular historical and cultural moments that accelerated the rise of modern entitlement. The sexual revolution of the mid 20th century marked a pivotal turning point. It dismantled many traditional restraints on female behavior under the banner of liberation. Women gained greater freedom in sexual choices, career paths, and social expression. On the surface, this appeared empowering, and in many individual cases, it was. Yet the broader societal impact included a weakening of the mutual obligations that previously bound men and women together. Prior to this period, courtship involved clear expectations. Men demonstrated provision and protection. Women demonstrated chastity, domestic capability, and emotional support. Families and communities enforced these norms because stable pairings benefited the group. When those norms eroded, women faced fewer consequences for demanding resources and commitment without equivalent investment. Men faced greater risk in offering those things without guarantees of loyalty or reciprocity. The resulting imbalance grew over decades until it reached today's visible crisis. The rise of no fault divorce laws in the 1970s further tilted the scales. Previously, divorce required evidence of serious fault such as abuse or abandonment. The new framework allowed either party to end a marriage unilaterally with significant financial implications, often favoring the wife. Men who had invested years in building assets and careers suddenly found themselves supporting two households while losing daily access to their children. Stories of devastated fathers became commonplace. Young men observing these outcomes internalized the lesson that marriage could destroy everything they worked for on the whim of changing feelings. Feminism evolved through waves that increasingly framed men as the source of women's problems rather than partners with complementary strengths. Early efforts focused on legal equality, which most reasonable people supported. Later iterations emphasized systemic patriarchy as the root of all inequality. This narrative encouraged women to view men with suspicion and to demand advantages as correction for historical wrongs. Personal responsibility took a backseat to collective grievance. The result was a generation of women raised to believe They owed men nothing while men owed them everything. Media throughout this period reinforced the shift. Advertising portrayed women as deserving of luxury and attention. Television sitcoms often depicted husbands as bumbling providers whose wives managed the real intelligence of the household. Popular music celebrated female independence and materialism while encouraging men to prove their love through spending and sacrifice. These cultural signals accumulated until they shaped expectations at the deepest levels. Consider the story of a man born in the 1960s who married in the 1980s with traditional values. He worked hard, provided a home, and remained loyal through the ups and downs of raising children. When his wife decided she wanted more excitement in her 40s, she initiated divorce. The court awarded her substantial support and primary custody. He continued paying while rebuilding his life with diminished resources. His sons watched this process and quietly vowed never to put themselves in the same position. One chose lifelong bachelorhood. The other delayed marriage until his late 30s and maintained strict financial separation even after wedding. The pattern of caution passed from father to sons as lived wisdom rather than abstract theory. Similar stories multiplied across communities, creating a collective male memory of risk. Grandfathers whispered warnings, fathers shared cautionary tales, sons absorbed the message and adjusted their behavior accordingly. The walkaway day did not begin with online communities or viral videos. It began in courtrooms, living rooms, and broken homes where men experienced the consequences of imbalanced systems firsthand. Economic changes paralleled these social shifts. The transition from manufacturing to service economies altered the types of skills valued in the workforce. Jobs requiring physical strength and technical precision, which suited many men, declined in relative importance. Roles emphasizing communication, empathy, and administrative tasks, which often aligned more naturally with female strengths, expanded. Women entered these fields in large numbers, gaining financial independence that reduced their need for male provision. At the same time, men found fewer clear paths to demonstrate traditional value, which left many feeling directionless in the mating market. The internet and subsequent social media explosion magnified every trend. Women could now broadcast their demands to thousands or millions of followers, receiving validation that reinforced entitlement. Men could share their experiences of exploitation, finding community in the recognition that they were not alone. The transparency revealed patterns previously hidden within private relationships. What one man experienced as an isolated bad breakup became visible as part of a larger epidemic when thousands of similar stories surfaced online. Dating apps introduced a new variable by gamifying human connection. The swipe mechanic encouraged superficial judgments based primarily on appearance. Women received overwhelming attention, which inflated egos and encouraged harsher filtering. Men learned to optimize profiles and photos while still facing low response rates. The resulting dynamic favored women in the short term, but left many of them frustrated when high volume attention failed to convert into quality commitment. Rather than adjusting standards, many doubled down on demands, believing the problem lay with insufficiently high value men rather than their own approach. Psychological research has illuminated aspects of these patterns, though mainstream academia often frames findings through egalitarian lenses that avoid uncomfortable conclusions. Studies on mate preferences consistently show women prioritizing resources and status more than men do. Men prioritize physical attractiveness and youth more strongly. These preferences are not socially constructed in total. They appear across cultures and correlate with evolutionary pressures. Women seeking providers make sense given the historical costs of reproduction. Men seeking fertile partners make sense given the drive to reproduce efficiently. When modern culture tells women they should ignore or override these preferences in favor of pure emotional connection while simultaneously encouraging them to demand provision anyway, the contradiction creates dysfunction. Women want the emotional high of passionate attraction combined with the security of high resources. When they cannot find both in one package, they become dissatisfied and blame men for failing to embody the impossible ideal. Men face their own contradictory messaging. They are told to be sensitive, emotional, and egalitarian while also being expected to lead, provide, and remain unflappable under pressure. The result is confusion and performance anxiety that women interpret as weakness. A man who shares vulnerabilities risks being labeled insecure. A man who maintains stoic strength risks being called emotionally unavailable. The double bind leaves many opting out entirely. The entitlement manifests in concrete behaviors that men encounter repeatedly. On dates, women may order the most expensive items on the menu without offering to split or even acknowledging the gesture. They expect the man to plan every detail while providing minimal input or enthusiasm. In relationships, they demand constant communication and validation while becoming defensive when asked for the same. They post content celebrating female independence, yet expect men to handle traditional male responsibilities without complaint. When challenged, they reframe the discussion around their feelings rather than addressing the imbalance. These behaviors are not universal, but they are common enough to shape male perception. The average man today approaches new interactions with women carrying defensive caution rather than open optimism. He has been burned or has witnessed enough burns to protect himself proactively. This shift represents a form of collective learning that is difficult to reverse without major changes in female behavior and cultural messaging. Philosophers and thinkers throughout history have commented on the challenges of male female relations. Schopenhauer stands out for his directness and willingness to describe female nature without the filters of chivalry or political correctness. His essay on women remains controversial because it challenges the romantic idealization that many prefer to maintain. Yet, his core insights about emotional reasoning, short term focus, and the drive toward personal advantage continue to find validation in everyday experience. He argued that women possess a certain intellectual inferiority in matters requiring abstract thought or long term planning, detached from personal circumstances. This is not a blanket condemnation of female intelligence. Women demonstrate excellence in social intelligence, emotional reading, and practical adaptation. Yet, when it comes to pure logic, detached from feelings, or the creation of groundbreaking works that transcend personal experience, men have historically dominated. Schopenhauer attributed this to the fundamental orientation of each sex. Women remain closer to the immediate demands of life and reproduction. Men can more readily detach and pursue ideals. This difference explains why debates between men and women so often stall. The man seeks consistency and truth. The woman seeks resolution that feels good in the moment. She may concede temporarily under pressure, but revert when emotions shift again. The man who understands this stops investing energy in changing her fundamental operating system. He accepts it and decides how much of his life he is willing to expend navigating it. The black pill lens incorporates these insights into a coherent worldview. It acknowledges biological realities, cultural distortions, and individual variation. It rejects both naive pedestalization and blanket hatred. Instead, it promotes pragmatic realism. Women are capable of great warmth, loyalty, and partnership when properly incentivized and held accountable. They are also capable of profound selfishness, chaos, and extraction when those restraints are absent. The wise man structures his life to maximize exposure to the positive while minimizing risk from the negative. Practical application means developing unbreakable personal standards. Never ignore early red flags of entitlement, no matter how attractive the woman or promising the initial chemistry. Maintain financial boundaries from the beginning. Split costs or alternate paying in a way that demonstrates mutual investment rather than one sided provision. Observe how she handles disagreement. Does she engage with your perspective or immediately escalate to feelings and accusations? Her response in small conflicts predicts her behavior in larger ones. Build a life that does not depend on female validation. Strong body, sharp mind. Meaningful work and solid male friendships create a foundation that no entitled partner can undermine. From that position of strength, you can enjoy connections without desperation. You can walk away without fear when standards are not met. You can lead with calm confidence rather than anxious appeasement. The current epidemic of rude and greedy behavior among many modern women stems from the perfect storm of biological tendencies amplified by cultural permission and economic independence without corresponding responsibility. Men have responded rationally by noticing the pattern and adjusting their behavior en masse. The walk away is not punishment, it is self preservation and the pursuit of peace on terms that actually deliver it. Let us now expand into the ways men can reclaim their power and build lives of purpose despite the challenges posed by modern female entitlement. The first and most fundamental step is cultivating unbreakable self respect. This begins with physical transformation. Regular resistance training not only builds muscle, but also boosts testosterone confidence and mental resilience. A man who respects his body sends a powerful signal to himself and the world that he values his own well being. This internal respect makes it far easier to enforce boundaries with others because he is no longer willing to tolerate treatment that undermines his health or dignity. Next comes mental fortification. Reading philosophy, history, and evolutionary psychology provides context for understanding human behavior beyond surface level social narratives. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and other thinkers who examine the raw aspects of existence offer tools for seeing through illusions. Modern research in behavioral genetics and sex differences adds empirical weight to those observations. The man who studies these fields stops being shocked by female behavior. He anticipates it and responds strategically rather than emotionally. Financial independence forms the third pillar. When a man controls his resources, he controls his options. He can walk away from toxic dynamics without fear of ruin. He can choose relationships based on genuine compatibility rather than economic necessity. Building wealth through disciplined saving, investing in career advancement creates freedom that entitlement cannot touch. It also raises his own value in the eyes of women who do value provision, but only when it comes from strength rather than desperation. Social calibration is equally important. Men need strong male friendships that provide honest feedback and camaraderie. These relationships counteract the isolation that can occur when dating becomes draining. They offer perspectives unfiltered by female sensitivities and remind men of their intrinsic worth beyond romantic validation. Group activities, sports, or shared projects strengthen these bonds and provide outlets for masculine energy that relationships may not fulfill. Emotional regulation stands as a critical skill that many men must develop deliberately. Traditional stoicism has its place, but complete suppression leads to vulnerability when intense feelings arise. The balanced approach involves feeling emotions fully while refusing to let them dictate actions. Techniques such as meditation, journaling, or working with a competent therapist can help process attachment and rejection without becoming overwhelmed. The man who masters this can enjoy the positive aspects of female companionship without becoming enslaved to the negative ones. When interacting with women, the frame must remain solid from the outset. This means leading conversations and activities with confidence while observing rather than investing prematurely. Pay attention to actions over words. Does she contribute effort or simply receive? Does she respect your time and boundaries or test them constantly? Early indicators predict later behavior with high accuracy. The man who ignores them in hopes of potential usually pays the price later. Setting explicit standards prevents ambiguity. Make it clear through behavior and calm communication what you will and will not accept. If she makes unreasonable demands or displays entitlement, withdraw attention and investment immediately. Do not negotiate or explain excessively. Actions communicate more effectively than arguments. When she experiences consistent consequences for poor behavior, she either adjusts or moves on. Either outcome protects your peace. The concept of the black pill provides a philosophical anchor for these practices. It is the recognition that human nature, including female nature, contains dark potentials that polite society often denies. Accepting this truth does not lead to cynicism when paired with self development. It leads to wisdom. You expect less from others and more from yourself. You give from abundance rather than need. You enjoy connection when it is mutual and healthy, but you do not require it for fulfillment. Stories of men who have applied these principles demonstrate the transformative power. One individual spent his 20s chasing validation through relationships that consistently left him drained. After a particularly painful breakup, he committed to a year of focused self improvement. He trained intensely, read, extensively advanced his career, and cultivated male friendships. When he re entered dating, he approached it with zero tolerance for entitlement. The first woman who displayed demanding behavior without reciprocity was politely but firmly disengaged from. The second showed more promise but still tested boundaries around financial expectations. He held firm and she eventually withdrew. The third interaction revealed a woman who matched his effort and respected his frame. The relationship developed naturally without the usual power struggles. He attributes the success to his internal changes rather than luck. Another man chose permanent singlehood after multiple experiences with greedy and rude behavior. He built a successful business, purchased property, and traveled extensively. His life became rich with experiences and accomplishments that brought genuine satisfaction. He maintains friendly interactions with women in social settings, but never allows them close enough to disrupt his peace. When asked about regret, he expresses none. The freedom to direct his energy entirely toward his own goals outweighs any temporary loneliness. He has found community among like minded men who share similar values and lifestyles. These paths illustrate that there is no single correct response to the current landscape. Some men will find compatible partners who demonstrate the rare combination of beauty, character, and reciprocity. Others will thrive in purposeful bachelorhood. Both choices can lead to fulfillment when grounded in self mastery and realistic expectations. The common element is refusing to subsidize entitlement with your life force. Cultural change, if it occurs, will likely come slowly and through pressure from below rather than top down reform. As more men opt out of marriage and long term commitment, the incentives for women to adapt may increase. Those who want families and stable partnerships will need to offer genuine value rather than demands. Those who refuse will face higher rates of singlehood and childlessness, which may eventually prompt reflection. In the meantime, individual men must focus on what they can control their own development and choices. The intensity of the current situation stems from the collision between ancient biological drives and modern freedoms without accompanying wisdom. Women empowered to express their feelings and desires without restraint often do so in ways that prioritize self over mutual benefit. Men empowered with options choose self-preservation over continued sacrifice. The resulting tension is uncomfortable but necessary for eventual realignment. Understanding this dynamic allows men to move beyond anger into strategic action. Anger is a natural initial response when recognizing how much has been lost or wasted in unbalanced relationships, yet sustained anger drains energy that could fuel creation. Channel it instead into discipline and purpose. Use the clarity to build rather than destroy. The men who do this become examples for others and architects of their own destiny. Let us now delve into historical parallels that illuminate our current predicament. Throughout recorded history, societies have grappled with balancing male and female natures. Ancient civilizations often established strict social structures to channel sexual and emotional energies productively. Marriage was not primarily about personal fulfillment, but about family stability, property transmission, and child rearing. Women were protected and provided for, but also constrained by norms that discouraged entitlement and chaos. Men were expected to lead and provide, but received respect and loyalty in return. The collapse of such systems frequently coincided with periods of moral and social decay. When women gained excessive freedom without responsibility, or when men abdicated their roles, the social fabric weakened. Empires that once thrived on disciplined family units began to fragment as individual desires took precedence over collective good. Historians have noted correlations between declining birth rates, family breakdown, and eventual civilizational stress. Our modern situation echoes these patterns, though amplified by technology and global scale. In ancient Rome, for example, the later periods saw increasing divorce rates, materialism, and shifting gender expectations. Women from elite classes gained more legal and social freedoms. Traditional virtues of chastity and domesticity eroded among certain segments. Men responded with cynicism or withdrawal from family life. The empire faced internal decay alongside external pressures. While many factors contributed, the breakdown of family structures played a role in weakening social cohesion. Similar dynamics appeared in other cultures during times of transition. When traditional restraints loosened without new stabilizing mechanisms, the predictable result was increased conflict between the sexes and declining commitment to shared futures. Men in those eras who recognized the shift often focused on personal virtue philosophy or alternative communities rather than futile attempts to reform the larger culture. They preserved their integrity even as surroundings deteriorated. These historical lessons suggest that individual adaptation is more reliable than hoping for broad societal correction. Men today can study the past to avoid repeating ineffective strategies, rather than trying to convince women or society at large to return to balance. They can build microcultures of excellence among themselves. Strong male networks that emphasize discipline, honor, and mutual support create environments where entitlement finds no purchase. Women who wish to participate must align with those values or remain outside. The philosophical tradition offers additional guidance. Stoicism taught men to focus on what is within their control and to maintain virtue regardless of external circumstances. This mindset is particularly valuable when dealing with forces like female nature that cannot be fundamentally altered. Accept the reality, control your response, build your character. The serenity that results is its own reward. Nietzsche warned against the dangers of resentment and enslaved morality. Men who dwell in bitterness toward women risk becoming defined by the very dynamic they reject. Instead, he advocated for creating values from a position of strength. Become the type of man who attracts quality through excellence rather than demanding change from others. This creative approach turns potential adversity into fuel for greatness. Combining these insights with modern understanding of evolutionary psychology creates a powerful framework. Biology sets the baseline, culture modifies it, individual will determines the outcome. Men who master all three levels position themselves for success, whether that means selective partnership or fulfilling independence. Practical strategies for daily life flow naturally from this framework. Morning routines that include physical training, meditation, and goal review establish a strong frame before interacting with the world. Financial tracking and investment habits ensure resources remain under your control. Selective social engagement avoids energy draining people, including entitled women who offer nothing but demands. Continuous learning keeps the mind sharp and adaptable. In romantic contexts, the principle of abundance thinking replaces scarcity. When you know you can build a great life alone, the desperation to secure a partner vanishes. This shifts power dynamics dramatically. Women sense when a man needs them versus when he simply enjoys their company. The latter is far more attractive and sustainable. It also protects against manipulation because your emotional baseline does not depend on her approval. Filtering becomes ruthless but necessary. Early conversations should reveal her attitudes toward reciprocity, responsibility, and male female roles. Questions about past relationships handled carefully can indicate patterns. Observe how she speaks about ex partners. Does she take any accountability, or is every failure attributed to men? Her narrative reveals her operating system more reliably than surface charm. When red flags appear, do not ignore them in hopes of transformation. People change slowly and usually only under significant pressure or personal crisis. The entitled woman who has received validation for years is unlikely to suddenly embrace humility because one man sets boundaries. Better to release her quickly and preserve your resources for higher value interactions or personal growth. The reward for this disciplined approach is multifaceted: greater peace of mind, increased confidence from self mastery, deeper male friendships that provide genuine support, financial security that opens doors, and the possibility of encountering a woman who truly complements rather than depletes your life. Even if that last element never materializes, the other benefits more than compensate. As men continue walking away, the cultural conversation will evolve. Some voices will call for understanding and reform. Others will double down on shaming and denial. The men who have already awakened pay little attention to either. They focus on execution, building lives that demonstrate the superiority of self directed purpose over endless negotiation with entitlement. This path requires courage because it goes against decades of social programming that told men their highest purpose was sacrifice for women and family. Reclaiming that narrative for yourself means defining purpose on your own terms. It may include family if conditions are right. It may center on legacy through work creation or mentorship. The key is that the definition comes from within rather than external pressure. The intensity of the anger many men feel initially is understandable. They have been sold a false bill of goods. They invested under one set of rules only to find the game changed midway. Recognizing the deception naturally produces strong emotion. The mature response channels that emotion into constructive action rather than destruction or despair. Build, strengthen, lead by example. The results speak louder than complaints. The story of male awakening is still being written. Each man who chooses clarity over illusion, self respect over appeasement, and purpose over desperation adds a chapter. Collectively, these choices create a movement not of organized protest, but of quiet, powerful redirection. Energy that once flowed into unbalanced relationships now fuels personal and communal excellence. The peace that results is profound because it is earned through truth rather than maintained through denial. Women who read or hear these observations may react with defensiveness or dismissal. That response itself illustrates the challenge. Rather than engaging with the substance, many will focus on the perceived tone or attack the character of men who speak honestly. This pattern mirrors the very dynamic described. Feelings override facts, blame shifts outward, accountability remains elusive. The cycle continues until enough women experience sufficient consequences to prompt genuine introspection. For men, the task is simpler, though not easy. See the truth, accept it without bitterness. Act accordingly with discipline and vision. The world may not change overnight, but your world can transform immediately when you align your life with reality rather than fantasy. The entitlement of modern women is real. Your response to it will define your future. As we reach the end of this discussion, I want you to reflect honestly on everything we have covered together. Think about the patterns of entitlement that have become so common in modern women. Think about the way so many men have been treated as nothing more than resources for attention, time, and money, while being offered little of real value in return. Think about the biological truths, the historical lessons, and the personal stories that all point to the same conclusion. Women can choose better paths, but their core nature carries strong tendencies toward chaos, self centeredness, and emotional reasoning that often leaves destruction in its wake. Men have finally seen this clearly. After decades of one sided expectations and cultural punishment for simply being men. This is not hatred. This is understanding. This is men waking up to reality and choosing peace over endless sacrifice. Shout out to the 1 hour gang. What did you think about what we discussed today? Do you agree with the observations and the deeper truths we explored? Leave a comment below and share your honest thoughts. Tell us about your own experiences if you feel comfortable doing so. Your voice matters in this conversation, and hearing from other men who see the same patterns helps strengthen the collective awareness that is spreading across the world right now. Like the video if you like it. Do not forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.